business, or you tell them about, your organization, but it should go beyond that, right? So it's definitely more than an introduction. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can really work to nurture relationships as you are networking. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this piece, but I always want to make sure to talk about just some tips when you're thinking about networking. Whether you are going to an event, whether you are networking and thinking about, your LinkedIn and online presence using social media, you want to define your goals. So I would really encourage you to think about what is it that you're looking to do through networking. I have a typo here, but you want to make sure to be intentional and set a goal. So if I'm going to a networking event, where I may be meeting some industry experts, or I may be meeting potential clients, right? Potential business opportunities. So what is my goal, right? Maybe I want to connect with at least 2 people, when I'm going there. I want to at least, to walk away having, maybe a potential client, going to this event. So really thinking about like, what is your goal? And then the next thing is develop your elevator pitch. So really be prepared to share who you are, what you do, and what you are looking to do in the future. When you're going out to events, you never know who it is that you're going to meet. You never know who they know, right? And what opportunities may lie ahead from there. So you want to make sure that you're always prepared to share your elevator pitch. And then also know your value proposition. So a couple of you primarily this session is for, freelancers and those that are looking to start a business. So it's really important that you are understanding and knowing how to communicate why someone should buy your product or use your service. So just some things to think about as you are networking. The other thing is you want to make sure you network across all levels. So this is really critical into making sure that your network is well-rounded. You want to build relationships with individuals whom you can really learn from, and then, also create shared experiences with as well. So not just thinking about, I really want to network so, I can, primarily only meet the CEO or only meet the executives, but it's important that you're also meeting people that are, where you are currently, but also maybe where you want to be, or maybe someone that is just starting out, right? So these could be like mentees, people that you can also pour into. So I think it's important to think about not only what impact that you are looking to make, but also how others can impact you at the same time. So what this can look like: fellow industry experts, mentors, mentees. There's a program that I know Be Nimble does a lot of partnerships with, Mentors of Color, great organization. I've been a part of Mentors of Color. And it's just really great to be able to not only have mentors and people that you can learn from, but also be able to share the knowledge that you have, right, as an expert in your space. And then potential clients and customers, thinking about leaders in your industries, and then also people that could be potential like business partners, maybe people that you can collaborate as well. So really, when you're thinking about what your goals are with networking, you also want to keep in mind who it is that you want to connect with, and then want to continue to nurture those relationships with. The next thing I want to really talk about before we get into LinkedIn is networking online and offline. So it's important that you do both. Whether you have a business yet, or you're just thinking about starting your business, you are your own brand, right? So you really want to think about, what does my online presence look like? How am I really establishing myself as an expert? How am I building credibility? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the session. But when we think about online opportunities, this could be social media. So LinkedIn, if you have a business page, maybe on Facebook, or, different websites, especially on the side of like freelancing, right? So making sure that you are on websites where if businesses are looking for a freelancer or, a consultant, making sure that you have presence on those websites. These could also be, again, online groups. So if it's a LinkedIn group that you can request to be a part of, a Facebook group, some are public, some are private, but these are also great ways to network and build relationships. And then also lending your expertise to publications and articles. So a really good way to just, really be a thought leader, and then also be able to contribute to, the community that you're in the industry that you're a part of. So really thinking about how you can build your online presence, and then also offline opportunities, right? So these can be events, partnerships, professional groups and associations. There's so many different groups out there that you can be a part of. So would definitely recommend checking that out. Mentorship programs, and then also informational interviews. So really thinking about people who are leaders in your space and how you can connect with them. So the main thing, you want to be intentional and you want to be genuine. I always think, especially when you're, maybe if it's an informational interview with someone that's, within your industry, or if you're just, again, just networking across the board, get to know people because you really want to know them, right? Not what they can do for you, not how they can invest in your business. It's good to keep those things in mind, right? Because you want to be intentional, right? And you want to make sure that you are putting yourself in spaces where you can grow your business, but also just get to know people for them. And, really see, I think there's so much power in building a network that is inclusive of those in your industry and maybe those outside of your industry, right? Because you never know how their partnerships can form, or even just friendships and long-lasting relationships. So I think when you're being very genuine and authentic when you're networking, that's how you can build relationships that go beyond that introduction. So I want to pause and just ask a question to the group. What and maybe so I'll ask either one of these. So it can either be, what would be a positive experience that you've had when networking? Like, what was a networking win for you that you've experienced by applying some of these skills? Or maybe on the other end of that, what is something that you have maybe struggled with when networking? So either a success story or maybe something that you want to improve upon.
I could add a win. So a few years ago, I used to work in higher ed. And before I worked in higher ed, I was fighting to get in higher ed. So I went to an event and I did set a goal to connect with similar people who are already working in positions that I wanted to work in. And so I can't remember where the conference was, but I was able to connect to one woman who she was from Gary, Indiana. And since I went to high school, we were able to connect off of that. And I told her about my goals, and she immediately wanted to become a mentor. And she actually helped me get my first job in higher ed. And she went as far as like looking over my resume, interview prep, more than I expected. And I really was my intention wasn't really to get a mentor. It really was to connect with somebody who looked like me, who was working in that space. So yeah, that was a win. And then I'll answer the other question. Because I'm an introvert, sometimes I do get stuck on just like, well, I'll just sit back and let everything happen. And it usually works for me to kind of know before like who's going to be there and plan that way. But I am also interested in tips on like when I don't know who's going to be in the room and how to navigate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to acknowledge first the first thing you said about, how you ended up with a mentor. And I love that, right? I think that goes to speaks to the point of you never know how a relationship can, transform, right? And then also ended up, it sounds like they were able to be really impactful for you. So I love that you shared that. And then also, and Tara also mentioned the same thing in the chat about networking is challenging as an introvert. And so one thing that I will say to that, it is easier said than done, right? So we can say like, oh, I'm going to go to networking events and, but sometimes it's getting to the event, right? And then there may be times maybe you go with a friend and then your friend cancels and you're like, oh, now I got to go by myself, right? So I think that for one, it's definitely okay to be an introvert, and I think you can 100% network as an introvert. And I think the first thing is, showing up, right? So that is the very first thing I would say. Whether you go there and maybe you didn't meet, the 5 people you wanted to meet, but you showed up, that's enough, right? So the first thing is just getting there, getting in the spaces. And then I think the next thing is, when in doubt, just introduce yourself to someone. There have been times where I've gone to networking events and I was only by myself and I found somebody else who's by themselves, right? Because maybe both of us are kind of in the same, shoes of we don't know where to get started. We don't know anyone. So I've tried that in the past, just maybe walked up if there was a table, open space at a table, and there was somebody who was there, just, introduce yourself. And then I also think just, let the conversation flow from there. I think as I would say, sometimes I kind of think about myself as like a extroverted introvert sometimes. So I can be in spaces and talk, but I also need to come back to self, and reset. So I think for me, thinking about in advance, like, okay, if I know my goals going into this event, it's going to be a lot easier for me to think about like, what would my talking points be, right? Sometimes small talk and things can be a little uncomfortable. So if I know what my goals are coming into the event, I know what things that I may want to talk about. So someone's, we're talking a little bit about our careers and things, and my goal is to maybe get more, collaborative, partnerships or clients. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about my business, or, something, or just even something fun, right? Something that kind of breaks the ice. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about my puppy. It just depends on the way the conversation is going. But I think just really being as genuine as you can and just being yourself. And when in doubt, just introduce yourself and let the conversation flow from there. So that's how I've navigated that in the past. Hopefully that was helpful. So I'll continue on here. Thank you both for just sharing your experiences with us. I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, and then I'm gonna share a little bit of kind of must-have things to keep in mind for LinkedIn, and then I'm gonna do a walkthrough, and then we're gonna do a little bit of application. So first, I just want to highlight this quote: LinkedIn is the ultimate relationship building tool for business professionals. So I think that LinkedIn has transformed so much since it first started. I think a lot of times people would refer to LinkedIn primarily if you were working 9 to 5. It's really just a space, for you to be able to showcase your work experience and then, look for jobs. But LinkedIn has evolved so much, and it has really become a tool for entrepreneurs as well. There's a lot of different features and different ways that you can establish yourself as an expert, but then also that you can get clients and grow your business utilizing LinkedIn. The good thing about LinkedIn, when we think about other social media apps, people are on LinkedIn to do business, right? Whether it is their 9 to 5, whether it's their business that they own, that is the primary tool for LinkedIn. And so it is such a great opportunity. There are paid features of LinkedIn, but it's free. It's a free tool that you can use to, really grow your business and establish your personal brand. So I'm going to talk about just some must-haves when we're thinking about LinkedIn. And so the first thing is having a professional photo and header. So in the very first, I would say when we think about, you know, I always tell people your resume is the first impression of you, but nowadays people are just going straight to LinkedIn, right? You know, they're a lot of times just going to see if you have your LinkedIn profile attached. They're going to see if they can find you on LinkedIn, right? And so you want to make sure that you are using a professional photo and header that aligns with your brand. This could also include your title or titles. So thinking about, I would say when you're establishing and thinking about what your titles would be, think about what do I want people to keep me in mind for? So when opportunities come up and they're considering someone for an opportunity, what do I want that? How do I want them to think of me, and what do I want them to consider me for? And then a call to action. So I'll talk a little bit about that, but now there's a opportunity for you to have a contact me button at the top of your LinkedIn. So definitely want to make sure you have that. You want to make sure you have a very strong about me section. So this is where you create a summary that highlights your experience and core skill sets that align with the areas of interest. So you want to make sure that you are summarizing, you know, your a little bit about your work history, but also really think about, again, going back to what are your goals, right? So if you're thinking about your LinkedIn and your maybe a full-time entrepreneurship, it's good to talk about your work history, but really talk about the things that make you most credible in the space of your business. So really think about how you can tailor that section that aligns with the opportunities that you were looking for. And then also your work history, right? So, you know, as you normally would, highlight your work history, showcase the experience that has really developed you into a subject matter expert. So this is really, again, to that credibility piece about how you can show your work history that's gotten you thus far. Thinking about your work history, you definitely want to use like action words, for example. You want to make sure that you are also linking relevant skills. So I'll talk a little bit about this when I do just a LinkedIn walkthrough. I'll kind of do a walkthrough of my LinkedIn. But you can highlight core skills per work history that you have. So that's a really good way for people to kind of see a summary of the skills that you've gained in your previous work history. That's a little bit of a newer feature relatively. And then your skills section. So this is a great opportunity for you to list your skills, and I would say don't hold back, right? So LinkedIn does allow for you to list a ton of skills, but I would also encourage you to think about what are your core skills, and then think about the skills that are most relevant to the opportunities of interest. This is also something where you should think about updating on a regular basis, right? So I recommend for people to update their LinkedIn on a quarterly basis. Reason being, sometimes when we maybe start a job or we start our business, that transitions over time, right? You may have different things that you have accomplished. You may have new skills that you've gained. You may have some things that you started doing when you started your business that you may not want to do anymore, right? So maybe some of those are some things that you can really go in and make sure that you are keeping that updated. So that when people are looking at your LinkedIn, they know again what they should consider you for and what they can hire you for, right? The next is recommendation. So this is going to be really big for all of you. I would recommend that you request recommendations and testimonials. These can be from previous coworkers, clients, business partners. This really helps when you are establishing yourself as an expert in your space. I know I've said that so many times. When we think about the purpose of LinkedIn, it is really to build your brand, right? So definitely would recommend that you are requesting those. And then also your featured section. So inserting your website, creative portfolio, any other articles, videos, links, things that you've been a part of, that you've collaborated on to highlight your past experience. So I know I've been talking a lot, but are there any questions so far before I kind of just do a little bit of a walkthrough? All right, so I'm going to switch my screens here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a walkthrough before we kind of put this in action here. All right. Okay. Oh, can you all see my LinkedIn screen? Is that working? Oh, sorry, 1 second. It's always tricky. The share window and share screen is always a little tricky. Okay, so let me reopen this. All right. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to just show you all just some of the things that I've been talking about so far, and then we will choose one of these areas to just be able to work a little bit on while we're in the session today. So primarily first, as I was talking through some of those must-haves, I started with the header. So this box here, this box with the photo, this is where you want to primarily think about how you want people to see you as they first see your LinkedIn. So for your header photo, definitely would recommend a professional photo. But then also really want to think about a header that maybe most aligns with you. So I have the skyline of Indianapolis, but maybe this is a header where you are speaking, right? Or something that maybe speaks to a little bit about your brand. It could be a catchphrase or whatever it is, your motto. So you can use a creative header that really helps to establish your personal brand. So I'm going to just click on this button here. So as you are highlighting, first thing I want to call out that I talked a little bit about is your headline. So I would encourage you, don't just use your job title, right? I think so many people, there's a missed opportunity if your headline only includes your job title. So really think about not only your job title, but what are your titles in business? There's all types of ways that people get creative about how they verbalize their headline. So definitely would recommend that you think about that. And then I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. So you can add a custom button. So this again is that call to action when people are selecting you for a business. And honestly, not even just business, but it could be a job opportunity, right? So you can create a custom button here where people can request services, which is really cool. So just wanted to highlight that. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here to where you can see the about section. I'll talk about analytics towards the end, but the about section. So you want to make sure, again, summary. I like to separate mine into summary and then core skills. For those that have a business and working 9 to 5, and you're planning to continue both. I highlight my 9 to 5 here, and then I highlight my business next. And then when I'm highlighting my skills, I combine, so you can include your top skills. I combine skills that have to do with my business and my 9 to 5. So because again, I'm someone that I'm going to continue to work 9 to 5, at least for the foreseeable future, right? So it's important to me that I'm highlighting both so that I can be considered for all of those opportunities. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. So this is where you want to incorporate services. So this is another key area for you all. Want to make sure that you have this updated. So you can add services. You can add up to 10 services here that you offer through your business, your location. You can include pricing. I include a contact for pricing here. And then you can also include any media links, which is a really great feature as well. And then lastly, that I'll talk about outside of work history, I'll get to that. But this is that featured section that I was mentioning. So I recommend that on your LinkedIn, your business should be the very first link that people can click on. The next from there, so for me, I have my business link. I have link to Black and HR Indie. And then here I have some other links just for things that I have been a part of or been featured on in the past. If for those of you that have a professional portfolio, this is a great place for you to have a link to your portfolio as well. So definitely would recommend that you utilize this featured section and that you continue to build on it over time. And then the last thing I'll talk about, just work history. So again, here you can incorporate, I like to include a summary of the company, a few key points about what I do, and then include my core skills here. And then this recommendation section. So this is here where I was referring to, where you can have, and I would always request, so like, for example, after maybe you provide a service or someone uses your product, give it a little bit of time, but then maybe circling back to say, hey, I would love if you could write a recommendation, you know, based on your experience working with me. So here, I like to just make sure that I'm requesting these. Sometimes you get responses and sometimes you don't, you know, it's just how it goes, right? But it never hurts to ask. And it's always nice when people can look at your profile and see previous recommendations. So in order to add these things here, you'll just go to the top and you'll add profile section, and that's where you can add these different sections that I'm going through here today. Any questions?
I did have a question. So I have been going back and forth between having a separate page for my business or just combining to my personal current LinkedIn. Are there any reasons why you would suggest someone not combining like you did?
So I think it just depends. For one, I think it just depends on your capacity to be active on the page, right? So if you're going to create a separate page, you know, knowing that you're going to post consistently, I just knew that that was not in my line of capacity. So for me, I prefer to just kind of combine it with my page, but also, for me, because my services also include speaking opportunities, that also I want to be, for me, I have to be the face of my brand, right? Where there are some businesses where you don't necessarily have to be the face of that, well, you are the face of the business, but as it grows and it scales, et cetera, you know, over time, you know, that business can kind of stand alone outside of primarily just you, if that makes sense. So that I think for me, that just made the most sense about where I'm at in my business, what my services are, and then also my capacity to remain consistent. I think maybe for anyone that is like building a community, for example, you know, with their page. So like for our Black and HR Indie page, we do have a separate LinkedIn page, and that's primarily for our members so that they can stay engaged. We can post in there. But for my business, primarily, I don't have, you know, any, I don't have a membership per se. So I think, again, like those are some things that I was considering. For your business, oh, I was going to say, for your business, are you leaning one way or the other? You know, if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit.
I get this is probably just not knowing if I should, just because what I want to offer is similar to what I'm doing at my job. I haven't checked if there's like a non-compete agreement or anything like that. So I may need to check with that first, either way. But it could also enhance my opportunities at the job. So I might just talk to managers and HR and see what's going on there.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend checking any like non-compete, making sure it's not like a conflict of interest, and just having that conversation. I think sometimes, especially when you're starting a business, it's like it can feel a little nerve-wracking to, have that conversation with your boss, or, HR, whoever. So, but I think transparency is the best way to go. And then also I know that, like Mercedes, I remember you mentioned that you were job seeking too. So even for those, like if you're transitioning jobs, when I was interviewing, I just let them know up front, like, hey, I have a business. This is what I do through my business. I want to make sure that that's going to be okay with you. And then I think you can kind of gauge on what makes the most sense for you and how you handle that based on their response too. But you got this, Whitney. It's going to go great. So I'm excited for you. So I'm gonna stop sharing this screen because I know we have about an hour, but I want to make sure that we have a little bit of uh, time to work on these things as well. So I'm going to reshare this other screen really quick. And then I just want to allow a little bit of time for us to work. So I would say we're going to take just a few minutes and let's spend just a little bit of time. Either you can make an update. Oops, I thought I was presenting. Here we go. So you can either make an update to your header and your About Me section. You could do your featured section or create a LinkedIn post from a recent event, accomplishment, or highlight. So we'll take just a few minutes just to work on this. If you have any questions, if you want to share your screen and ask me a question about LinkedIn, you can definitely do that. We're just going to take a few minutes to kind of do that openly. I would say some things to remember is lead with your most relevant content to your industry and then keep your purpose in mind. And then also be creative and utilize action words. So those are going to be like create, collaborate, serve, lead, manage, etc. As you were making some of those updates. So I will give us about, I would say about 5 minutes. I'll check in at the 5-minute mark to kind of see how we're doing. Are there any questions before we jump in? All right. If you have any questions at any point, you can feel free to come off mute. I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you have.
Hi, John. I had a question. Mm,
Yes.
about the experience from before the work you have done. How long it's like really much for your skill to put down inside it, or it's like a point, or the paragraph would be fine, or what do you suggest on the experience?
Yeah. So I'm gonna let me actually. I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm also gonna show you as well um, what I mean by what I'm saying too. So when you're highlighting your experience, so one thing it's you want to keep in mind is that this should be a summary, right? So you are primarily providing a summary of your work history. I would encourage you to think outside of your job description because there are so many things that we are hired to do, and then we end up doing a lot more than we were hired to do, or we end up doing some new things, right? So I would think about what are the things that I'm doing every day? What are the things that I'm doing every week, month to month, etc. And then really summarize what that experience is in relation to the types of opportunities that you also want to be considered for. That skills that you can add underneath the work history, you have a total of 5 that you can add. So let me just show you. So I just started in that position, but I'll show you this one, for example. So this role here, so I do like part-time consulting on the side. So I just included a list here of uh, just a little bit about the company, but then what exactly that I'm doing here. So I like to list, I would say between like 3 to 5 bullet points is kind of what I would recommend. But then these skills here that you can list up to 5. So like I could add one more here if I wanted to, but then when you're adding like your top 5 skills that are listed, you can, that is the amount that you cannot exceed there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. What I'm doing on my portfolio is like putting down all the information at once rather than bullet point like certain things.
What are you in your portfolio? What system or like tool are you using for that?
LinkedIn.
Oh, okay, got it. So your portfolio, is that a separate document or primarily you're showcasing your experience through LinkedIn?
Showcasing my experience through LinkedIn.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I mean, and then for you too, I think what'll be really cool is if you have like any links that you could include in your featured section, that's going to really make you stand out. A couple other resources like that I would recommend for portfolios could also be like Canva. Canva has a ton of templates for portfolios. As you know, kind of like a cheat code, you could definitely include a link to a Canva portfolio on your LinkedIn because you want to make sure that your LinkedIn tells a story about you, but also it should still be concise, right? It should not be like overwhelming too. So, I would still think about, how can you keep it summarized, utilize those separate sections to kind of separate out and piece out the information. But then if you maybe need a separate portfolio that really maybe you have pictures or statistics or numbers and things that you want to incorporate, you could also use a separate document and include it in that featured section too.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, no problem. Any other questions? So my encouragement would be to whatever you started today to continue it. Maybe even make a goal by like the end of this month, maybe for some particular areas or over the next month rather, because we're almost at the end of the month, which is crazy. But, maybe over the next month or over the next quarter, these are some areas in how I want to enhance my LinkedIn. So definitely some things to kind of think about. I know we're getting close to time here. I want to make sure to just share a couple other things that I've mentioned so far as well. So just some additional tools, resources to think about. I would recommend having, like, in addition to LinkedIn as well, I would also recommend having a one pager or a media kit of some sort that really kind of highlights your experience. So when you are going to, like, maybe a networking event and maybe someone asks you, hey, do you have, and I'm using myself for example, so I have a speaking kit, and it's a document that I built in Canva. And so if I were to go out to a networking event and someone says, hey, do you have any more information to talk a little bit about the topics you speak on, or, the services that you offer, that, document kind of serves as my follow-up, right? So if I'm including that, it's sending them a message, hey, it was so great to meet you at this event. Here, you can find my media kit. So something like that is what I would recommend. And if you have any questions, I can always show you what mine looks like. Happy to connect with you, any of you outside of this call as well. And then digital portfolio, which I talked about. So just really another interactive way that you can offer potential clients, business partners, to learn a little bit more about your business. And then the last thing that I want to highlight is a digital business card as well. So if you are going out to a networking event, you want to make sure that you are staying prepared, right? So I would make sure your business card is ready to go. I like hi, hello. That's what I've used. But there are so many digital business cards out there. I don't pay anything for this digital business card, which makes it even better, right? So, but on my digital business card, someone can connect with me on LinkedIn. They can add my social media pages. They can access my website, and they can also get my contact information, so they can contact me via email as well. So I would recommend that if you are going out to a networking event, that you have your digital business card ready, you have your LinkedIn updated, so that if someone's ready to connect with you in the moment, you don't have to get ready, because you're already prepared to meet with them and prepared to follow up with them, or prepared to be considered for any opportunities that may lie ahead as well. You never know who you'll run into, so you always want to stay prepared. So I just want to pause and see if there are any questions. I know this is a ton of information, so much more that I could go into, and different features that are available with LinkedIn, but hopefully this was a good start, and maybe highlighting some different things that maybe you haven't seen thus far. I'm happy to connect with all of you following this call as well, but any questions about LinkedIn, networking, anything that comes to mind, or even if it's catered specifically for your business? Happy to answer any questions that are present.
I have a question. Okay, because I do attend a part of being a founder, I attend a lot of networking events. And so how do you find your networking events? Are you on notifications through other companies? So yes.
Yeah, so first thing, a lot of times I will see events that are being posted by the people that I follow, right? So I think, thinking about events that you've attended in the past, maybe events that you enjoyed, maybe seeing who they collaborated with or for those events, who they partnered with. Maybe those are some organizations to then follow, follow their LinkedIn page, follow their events, turn on notifications. Sometimes I just get on Eventbrite and I just type in, events happening in the city this weekend, events happening in the city this month, and all types of events will pop up. Networking events, different things like that. I do that all the time. I do that for fun events too. Like, if I'm trying to do something different. So that's one thing. And then also just networking groups. A few that I'm a part of. So Emboss Network is one that I always recommend. It is an organization primarily for women and supporting women-owned businesses. I absolutely love that organization. Been a part of it for a few years now, and have made so many great connections. So that's one that definitely comes to mind. There's also Mentors of Color, which I mentioned, some others that I'm a part of. Black and HR India, I attend a lot of HR themed events or related events. So one thing I would think about is like specifically your industry, and then, you know, just maybe see, like I would literally type in like your industry and then maybe events in Indy relevant to this. And then any like educational spaces would probably also be a recommendation as well. I've gone to Indie Black Professionals. I love their events. Indie Networking is another really great organization as well. So there's all sorts of organizations that are happening in the city. And then if you're not in Indianapolis, for those of you that are maybe on the call or note takers that are not in Indianapolis, I would really just start by looking at or just typing in, you know, events happening in the city, or maybe tech related events that are happening in the city, for example. So that's how I find events all the time. And then
Yeah,
just
that Eventbrite is definitely a gem. That right there is how I find like 90% of my events. And I actually end up in this event through Eventbrite. So yeah.
oh, nice. Yes, I love a good Eventbrite because there's all types of things that'll pop up. So a good way to stay connected, stay tapped in. Any other questions? Well, with that, I would absolutely love to stay in touch with you all. I here my QR code is here, so this does connect to my digital business card. But I have my website here. You can contact me via email, connect with me on LinkedIn as well. But I would love to stay in touch. Would love to hear just maybe how I can be of support to you, whether it is with developing or, you know, showcasing your brand, but also even just supporting your business. I know a lot of business owners in the city, and then also consumers, right? So people that maybe could be potential customers, clients, any ways that I can support you or connect you. If you see someone on LinkedIn that I'm connected with, that you're looking to connect with, you know, let me know, just any way that I can support you as well. But really thankful that you all have stayed tuned in, and thank you for your engagement and for listening. I hope this was helpful for you. And Winnie, I'll pass it over to you if there's anything that you had to close this out.
Thank you so much, Jaylan. As usual, it was a wonderful session. I was taking notes. So thank you again. Jasmine, for you that you were asking about events. Can you guys can hear me okay? Or am I breaking up?
Yes,
Yeah.
I hear you.
Okay, good. So this week is Black Innovation Week, and Be Nimble is hosting a bunch of events. So here's the Instagram post. If you guys are interested in attending, we're going to have networking mixers, panels, a kick and a happy hour, like a lot of opportunity for networking and just get to know new people. So if you guys are in Indy and have some time, we're having events Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So feel free to join us. We're as usually, it's always a nice opportunity for me to hang out with you in person. And thank you again, Jaylan. This was fantastic. And thank you all for your time today. I hope we can connect again very, very soon. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good one,
Bye.
everybody.
Have a nice day.
Bye. You too. Bye, everybody. Thank you.